Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to another inspiring episode of I Am Dad Podcast. Today we are excited to have with us a true sports legend and dedicated father, Mr. David Tyree. David is best known for his iconic helmet catch in Super Bowl XLII, a moment that forever changed the course of football history and secured a stunning victory for my beloved New York Giants. But beyond the field, David is a purpose-driven leader, husband, and father of 7 who uses his platform to inspire others and champion faith, family, and resilience. From overcoming personal challenges to achieving greatness in the NFL, David's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and belief. He now channels his experiences into his work as a speaker, mentor, and advocate, helping individuals catch their moment and unlock their own potential. Today, we are honored to dive into David's journey as a father, his dedication to his family, and the values that drive his work off the field. So today, please join me as we welcome to the stage my good friend, David Tyree. How you doing, sir?
My brother, my dear friend, grace and peace, Kenneth Braswell. How you doing, Mission Man?
I'm doing good, man. Listen, I've been telling people lately, I was like, if you play spades, my life is like, listen, I'm just going to play the hand I got and hope my partner has the 2 jokers. That's all I'm hoping for.
I tell listen, just give me 2 in the pump. We can get 10.
Absolutely. And so other than that, man, life be lifing.
Man, it's real. It's real for us men, all overcoming so much. That's why I've always known each other for a long time, deeply admired your work for such a long time, because I think the more I've grown is there's no greater mission in the earth than being fathers. So, man, kudos to you. It's great to reconnect.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I was reminiscing the other day about where I first met you, and I met you through Chris. And so I think it was through Chris. It was through Chris.
Wow.
And him and I text each other every now and then. Like sometimes I'm listening to him, on First Things First, and I'll hear him say something and I'll text him real quick. He'll text, just kind of, having fun, with him. Interviewed him some time ago, need to get him, back. That I know that he's transitioned from the Odd Couple show. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing, but him and I was also sharing some stories, talk about this fatherhood space, about his own dad, and he's talking about his girls. And typically all of my friends, those that are close to me, such as yourself, we carry that bond around how fatherhood, you used this term earlier, threads through our life, that everything circles around this thing. And from the thing that I'm going to love about this conversation is you and I get to talk about our faith. Sometimes I kind of touch it a little bit, but this is my podcast. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. So I wanted to dig in a little bit into that space because, our faith, drives us both. I always tell people that if you want to know why I turn left and why I turn right, it's because God told me so. And I didn't ask no questions. And if you have faith in him, you should have faith in me because that's who I follow. And so our podcast is very, it's conversational in the sense, and we started off in this way. I think it sets the tone for the conversation. Sometimes people are thrown off by it. They have to think about it for a minute, but the story and how they relate it is always powerful. And it's simply this, David. What's your daddy's story? What's your daddy's story?
Man, 21 years old, Syracuse University, pursuing my dream of being a high-end Division I athlete. And obviously at this time I'm not in faith, come from a great well-meaning family, mother and father, single home. But at 21 years old, my wife today, thank God, tells me she's pregnant. And honestly, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. Is it my daddy's story about my daddy, or is it my story?
It's whatever your daddy's story is. I don't frame it.
Yeah. And I think what's important about this moment at 21 years old in Syracuse is it was the first time that my world no longer centered around me.
Mm.
The prospect of being a father was so daunting, and I had made so many poor decisions as a young man. I was, I'm the tail end of Gen X, so I'm in them streets for real. From alcohol, marijuana, the typical vices of a young African male black athlete, as primarily than women. And I think, I had an abortion at somewhere maybe 14, 15 years old. And getting to college, actually seeing one of my teammates who had a daughter, it was something that I was aware of. So when this opportunity came back around, I was terrified, but at the same time, I wanted to kind of give my girl the chance to really make this decision, also fearing terminating another life. But
Mm.
no fear of God, just like, man, seeing this man with his daughter playing Division I sports, it ate at me in my heart
Mm.
as a man. So yeah, it was the game-changing moment for me as a human, as a man that inspires. I think it's the first time I ever bought a book. It was James Dobson. I saw it in the airport, bringing up boys,
Right.
and that was like the shifting moment for me in my life. As far as I went to that line of scrimmage, visualizing my son, and I had a higher purpose, and I know that was the beginning of one dream transferring to another dream. Is how could I provide the best opportunity for this little young man that I found out was that I was going to be bringing into the world. So I mean, like it's been my growth trajectory, for lack of better
Mhm.
terms, it's been fatherhood. But yeah, I certainly have a dynamic story, because as I've matured as a man, you won't know what it is to be a man until you really become one. And
Mhm.
my father, I tell people my father is my hero, not because he was perfect, but because he did his best. So on
Right.
both sides, I'm covered, and it's been a great journey.
Throwback for a second. We just lost not too long ago, John Amos, who played James Evans on Good Times. What did he mean to the culture?
Honestly, everything. So here's my John Amos story. I'm from East Orange.
Hmm.
My earliest years in East Orange, New Jersey, moved to Montclair where sports blossomed, but I can remember either commercial or image of him in front of Clifford J. Scott High School, which is the high school that he attended in East Orange. My sister graduated. I wanted to be a Scotty dog. I would go. She would be a drill team, but John Amos was the shining figure, doing some kind of just he was our local hero.
Hmm.
And so not only was who he was in good times, you just talk about the representation. It's so powerful when you think about what representation means, and obviously who he was as a father to culture.
Hmm.
And I think that so he hit it for everybody, but for me personally, on a more endearing space, seeing him coming to like all these images of a father, it kind of starts with this kind of figure, a strong black man who was authentic, firm, strong, and cared about his family, right? And
Hmm.
so there's this obviously it's a complex journey for that, for the black man, but yeah, we just lost a icon in so many different ways, and I was privileged to meet him. Wish I was able to spend more time in his presence, but truly a gift from above, and I think it's going to be returned right back to where it belongs.
Yeah, nah, great guy, man. I had a chance to spend like 2.5 straight days with him
Oh my
in New
God!
York.
Oh,
10 now it's been 20 years ago. We had a dinner. I had a dinner in Harlem, and a good friend of mine, Terry Williams, knew him. And
mm,
so they were like, we should get James. And they kept saying James. And they said, oh, no, John. And I was like, who are you talking about? And they was like, John Abel. I'm like, James Evans? They was like, yeah. I'm like, you would get him? And they connected us up. And he actually took a train because he didn't like to fly. And
gotcha.
so he took a train to New York like 2 days, almost 2 days before the event. And I said, what would you like to do? And he's like, let's just hang out, brother. Let's just hang out. And I was like, okay.
Man,
Man, I have footage. I interviewed him. We were in the hotel and I put a camera on him. I probably interviewed him for like 3 hours. And so I have some footage of him
wow.
talking. Unfortunately, not for unfortunately, fortunately, depending on who you are,
Sure.
to hear him talk about a few things. One, his own father, which I
Mm,
was really unveiling. Two, talked about him being a father, and then talked about the love of both Casey, his son, and Shannon, his daughter, which
yeah.
is going to be wrapped up in a little controversy for a while until
Yeah.
that takes
Sure.
itself out, unfortunately, but shared so many different gems. He was old school.
Wow.
he laughed when I said, we were talking. I said, "Don't be selling me no Wolf tickets, Kansas City." I was like, man, listen, dude. I'm like, you have no idea how your roles, right?
Man,
Because we're gonna all look back at him as James Evans, but we're gonna
absolutely.
forget Kunta Kinte. We're gonna forget Cleo McDowell.
It's
You
Cleo
know,
McDowell for me, dog.
we're gonna forget Kansas City Mac.
Yeah,
We're gonna forget,
man.
those roles. And to your point about iconic, my hope is that as Black men in our community, that we revere him as iconic and we lift his name and his imagery, just like we will James Earl Jones and others that have passed recently, Dikembe Mutombo, who also just
Yes.
passed away. Like, these are brothers who not only led with their talents, but also led with their heart, and they were all fathers, to
Yes.
children. And so we need to make sure that, we uplift these conversations around these men, that
Yeah.
paved the way for us. So,
Man. So well said.
yeah. So talk a little bit. And he was a football player.
Man, that was a gem I just found out like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if it was a documentary. Yeah, I'm a documentary buff.
Mhm.
So if I'm going to give my the screen my attention, I try to learn something at least about
Yeah.
someone or something. So yeah, I caught his journey. I'm like, yo, man, heck, hey, what's going on? But it's one of those pivots that that really you might hear about the Terry Crews pivot and some of these other guys in more recent days, but that was an early one, man.
Yeah, it was.
From athlete to the big screen, it's special.
Hmm. So let's talk about your journey into the NFL, because
Sure.
that is kind of where people became somewhat aware of you, and as someone who's a New York Giants fan and everybody else around the country, fell in love with you as a result of that catch. But I really want to know what led you to football, because I do think that sports is such a cultivating and inspiring environment
It is.
that teaches you about life. And that's how I want to transition from that. But I want to talk about your journey into that space.
Yeah, it was definitely the shift as a young age. We had a quick little cup of coffee in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and then I ended up back in Montclair, New Jersey. And this was a well-known community, known for its diversity, well-to-do town overall, but it was authentic diversity. It was, and honestly, at the center of it was Montclair Cobras football program led by a Caucasian man named Howard Finney. But that was like where the culture collided, and it was our own version in Jersey of Remember the Titans.
Mm.
Newark riots back in the day, and that was like the melting pot in that community. And that's what the kids did. That was when my football journey started. I was a little Rudy Poo of these Stars running around the block playing hide and seek.
Man, I ain't heard that term in forever, man. You
Yeah, you
just
know what I'm saying?
dig duck deep in the crates right there for that one. But go
I
ahead.
got a little bit in me, man. Yeah, man. So, but organized sports came because that's what kids did in Montclair. And
Mm.
and I was the least on the least on the totem pole, man. It just was, these guys were the real deal. So Montclair has this historic public high school program, and that was where the fire began to get burned up, and I would really say, as I kind of move into a high school, things just kind of started to click. And I was never the best, and I was pissed. I just had
Mm.
and I think you've had so many of these powerful conversations. I'm a little bit of a history buff, so I get into what happened in the 60s and the breakup of the nuclear family, how that impacted African Americans. Like our generation is known as busters, busted up families. So you look at this generational dynamic. My dad wasn't in the home, but he was present as a disrupted family could be, which is why I just had a supportive parents. So they were just supportive of my journey, and things just started clicking. And my sister set a seed for me when she was in East Orange. I have a sister who's 9 years older, and she said to me, when I was in East Orange, she said, boy, you can get you one of them scholarships. Yeah, get you one of them scholarships. And I didn't play no organized sports. I just was a little kid, running around. And athletic, we outside for real. I know that's a term for this emerging generation. No, we lived outside. That was a good time. but Montclair is the seedbed. So that shift from East Orange to Montclair radically changed my perspective about what was possible. And so I just am, you understand that two things are going to happen. You're going to be shaped by your environment or by your training. And when you think about a father, he's responsible to some degree for both, right? Creating an environment, an atmosphere where our children can be nurtured up. And my parents did their best. And in that town, Montclair, they had such a Montclair pride. So my junior year, scholarships started rolling in. Syracuse was the first offer, got respectively recruited. And honestly, it was just kind of on the way. My dream was to be a Division I athlete. I always had this something in me that was disconnected from business and understanding that once something becomes business, it loses a little bit of its purity. So I saw that college sports, and whether it was the Florida State Seminole man, and you just see the atmosphere, it gets authentic, it's tribal, and I wanted every bit of that. And I was fortunate to really pursue my dream and acquire it when I got that full scholarship and chose to go to Cuba.
Yeah, it's crazy because, when we look back, particularly when I had this crazy conversation, a good friend of mine, you may know him, if not, you should know him, Bahati Van Pelt. He played for the Jack, you know him?
Yeah. I was in the league office when they first started the trust. So, yeah.
And him and I have had some incredible conversations. We still stay in touch. But I remember one time he invited me to come out to Vegas to do some workshops for the trust on family, marriage, and fatherhood. And he would bring me around the country to do those things, which was incredible. I wish there were always eye-opening experiences, but he would share football things with me that were related to family that no one would ever know if you weren't in the environment to ask the question.
Sure.
And he said to me one time, we were talking about, man, he says, bro, he says, you want to know the one of the keys to success to professional sports? And I said, what? And he says, a daddy or a positive male role model. And I said, what you mean by that? And he said, if you go and sit inside of high school locker rooms, he says, you will hardly see father figures or male figures in the high school locker room. He says, when you get to the collegiate level, you'll see a significant number more in the collegiate locker room. And when you get to the pro level, that's almost all you see. Like, it's a rarity to see a professional player that does not have either their father or a strong male role model in their life. Is that something that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what is given, when we obviously look at the percentages, 70% plus being African American, that motivation, I tell people, we understand as a human, discipline trumps motivation. But when you think about a young man being cultivated up, it's actually the motivation to excel and be good at something that creates the discipline in sport, right? And so even, I think so many parents are struggling trying to find their way to raise a healthy human child in light of all the demands of programs and sports and this and this and that. But it's the motivation that helps them to incentivize the discipline. And that's what these men and coaches represent. No one will ever replace your father and in any capacity, but it was those men who took on those roles that gave confidence, shaped them, and in an authentic, demanding way to be in the loss of that competitive environment. It's like, man, I need to be here, and I think it's the way God wired us, man, to be successful and multiply, be fruitful, right? Be successful. And there's nothing like competing and growing in confidence in a particular sport that provides that. So coaches, male figures, and mentors are the primary reason. That's kind of where I'm at. It's those men along the way that said something, did something, got me somewhere that made me become the man, that allowed me or permitted me to become this full expression of an athlete and the father that I am today.
Yeah, we also did a project with them, and we did a video series that they shared with the trust, only the players who were coming into the league around child support. And we had several NFL players come into my office, and we taped for like a whole day. Stevie Baggs was there. Wow, I can't remember his name now. The brother who just became the president of the trust, Zaire.
Oh, that's Zamir Cobb.
Zamir Cobb. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was here, had him in the office. We did this
Awesome.
whole thing on child support. And there was another brother here. I can't remember his name. He played for the Green Bay Packers.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played for the Packers. But anyway, we were in the break room eating lunch, and everybody was kind of standing around, and we was just chopping it up. And he shared this story, and that story has stuck in my head ever since he said it. And he says that one of the things that made it hardest for me to leave the league was people don't understand that helmet was our protection. He says, when I was playing little league sports in my community, my helmet was my shield. And he said, when I went into high school, it remained my shield. And he says, and what I mean is it protected me from things. People protected me. I became something that was worthy of protection from people. And he says, not having my father in my life, that was extremely important to have something that would protect me from predators and people that were trying to get close to me. And he says, and as I went to college and then went to the league, that shield around my head became stronger and stronger and stronger the higher up I went. And he said, and then one day I had to take my helmet off. And he said that when I took it off, I felt like I was naked to the world. Is that something that players think about? Did you think about that when you finally had to take that helmet off and think about how you had to fend for life a different way?
I tell you what, the most difficult part of the transition for me personally was, what am I going to be the best in the world at? And most of our players, the greatest struggle, I think, in the athlete community, and I've been on the front lines in this conversation, is our identity. Right? We see our identity in what we do, not who we are. So, one of the things I shape a lot of powerful conversations around is your creative purpose. And it's first as a son, a husband, and then a father. And if we can get those things in order, then we're going to really prosper in those. And obviously, when we have them out of order, we can be disjointed and increase stress and dysfunction. But to be a good son will prepare you to be an excellent husband and ultimately a father. And I think that the athlete has this unique challenge because there's been so much value. And I always say that football for so many of us was like a surrogate father. And whether you had a father or not, you found so much. You found the success, the praise, and the adoration of so many because of what you were able to do, not because of who you are, right? Because when you step away from this job, this role, this opportunity, I'm just going to be David Tyree. And so the gift for me was that I was secure who I was as a son of God, and I had my foundation laid as a husband, as a father, where I knew where my eternal worth was and my inherent worth. But I really struggled with, what am I going to be the best at now? Like, man, and that takes a lot of intention for players today to build a bridge to be able to jump off, not knowing exactly when they're going to have that opportunity to make that transition, because most of us are not calling the shots.
Wow. Now, the helmet catch changed your life. It changed all of our lives. Talk a little bit about the feeling of the moment. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you were no longer just David Tyree, right?
No.
You were connected to a moment in life, which is always, to me, bro, a very beautiful thing. I know people can be traumatized based on what kind of moment that was, but I think God gives us those defining moments in our lives sometimes, and we think it's about the thing, and it's not about the thing. It's about something else. It's about something that I need to awaken in you. And in order for me to awaken that in you, I have to give you this moment so that you can see what I'm trying to get you to see, after this is over. Talk about that moment, the feeling of that moment, and how it impacted you.
It was definitely a defining moment, and honestly, in so many different ways, and it still ministers to me to this day. It's still, I think I was born again after my rookie year. I got arrested with a half a pound of purple haze, might have been a pound, half a pound, I can't remember. I was wild for the night my rookie year, and I wasn't raised in the faith. I wasn't a church kid. I can remember on how many times my I went to church maybe on my hands, like maybe 5, 6, 7. When I went to my aunt's house, I had one faithful aunt. You go see my cousins, you're gonna go to Sunday school. So, but other than that, I was just out in them streets, man. I was a grade A American heathen. So when I encountered Christ at 24 years old, it blew my whole world away. And honestly, it made football look very dim. And because he was just so big. And I'd be over here looking at folks in the church like y'all was holding out. I'm like, I wasn't ready. I'm like, y'all ain't tell me about Jesus. Like y'all keep talking about getting saved. Tell me about, so it was a real encounter for me. And everybody has this different journey that I've grown to understand where they can receive that reality. But ultimately, I think he desires that for us. And that's all to say that now I'm a father. I was actually expecting my second child. He was born, I got born again in March. He was born in November. So it was crisis time in the middle of this transition. So the helmet catch to me was in my 5th season. And when I look at my journey as an athlete, I was never I was always a second fiddle, and I think everybody has these underdog journeys, and most athletes, whether they're the best in the world, they've mentally conditioned themselves to believe that they're underdogs. I think I was a true underdog. I come into the league as a special teams player, no expectations as a wide receiver, and I was always working my way into position to attain those goals and provide more than what, right, and not be put into a box. So the helmet catch for me was a crowning moment of validation. And it was God's way of saying, what God did for me in one moment, it would take most others Hall of Fame career. To be remembered as a part of the game that has actually raised me up in many areas of discipline. And I give my dad, Jesse, I said, I'm going to be working on a book soon called David, Son of Jesse, because my father's name is Jesse, and so is David and Jesse in the Bible. But what that moment meant to me was, wow, this is the game that God has put into my life to give me a desire. And I realized, man, this desire to excel, to be the best, to be dominant, to be a representative, to be a role model, all these things that come inherent with the opportunity. And I was experiencing all this disappointment, all the, you talk about the politics in the game and this guy's getting paid more, he's a draft pick. So I went through all that. So when the helmet catch comes and there's a lot of, man, you want to talk about testimony. There's a lot of testimony in that season that I can unpack around how close Christ was knitted to this ginormous helmet catch moment. So for me, it was a kiss from heaven. And I couldn't imagine the magnitude of that moment. It still bubbles over years later. I'll even share one recent opportunity that just kind of, I call it fall from heaven. I didn't even know who Kith Clothing was. And a few weeks ago, I ended up doing a photo shoot with Kith, one of the biggest brands in New York City. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and honestly, I've always wanted God to have all the glory. That's the reason why it wasn't about ascending to a mountain and staying there. But God has certainly used this moment to be a metaphorical moment of all things being possible and being a champion, not just for Christ, but also as an image bearer. And I think ultimately that's the power of NIL. I want to carry the name, image, and likeness of my Lord and carry that wherever I go and impart that into the world.
Yeah, I was thinking about you. First of all, is that the photo shoot with you with that Giants leather jacket on?
Yeah.
No, that was dope.
That was fire. Yeah. I was like, I guess I need to know more about these kid people. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to walk. I told my wife, obviously I did a shoot, and it was a good paid opportunity, good paid collaboration, and I was like, man, I hope they give me all this. Right. They're like, nah, man, we ain't giving you all this. They gave me some tan butters, and I'm from Jersey, so I'm like, I appreciate these tan butters. But they blessed me with something else too, and I'm grateful for it. I take everything as a gift from God.
Yeah,
so it's all good.
That's funny, man. They got to come through though. We got to send some letters or something. They got to come through on that one. Anyway, I was thinking about you. The last time I saw you in Ohio at the Hall of Fame.
Correct.
with
Just
Justin
that.
Bat and those guys. And one of the things, I took a bunch of pictures of you, bro. I only sent you a couple of some of the pictures that I took, but I think every picture I took of you was with your family. Man, if you could see the expression of your face, like with your family, it's priceless, man. Talk about your family a little bit and your children and what they mean to you as a father.
Man, everything, brother. Because my journey's tied to fatherhood. And as I've grown to know my father, he grew up in a divorced home. And you have some of the painful images, and they had a great amicable relationship. But mama she'll throw a little shade in
Oh,
there. She was growing up with it, but she'll throw a little salt in there, And my dad was he was a gift giver. He was really, I just got the sense that he was trying to make up for lost time. And as you grow and you begin to understand the whole narrative, because we always did have a good positive relationship, I realized it was really my mother's own immaturity and some of her bitterness that caused the separation. My dad, they were just working class people, good jobs, but making 40, 50,000 back in the days, working for Revlon, working for Bell Atlantic, all the good stuff, grinding and taking care of the family. And he had a vision and things didn't work out. And so when I look at my opportunity to be a father, I see so many parallels, of course, between me and my father. And I know, when things weren't working out between me and my wife prior to us, prior to me being transformed and recognizing how wonderful she was. And I used to just have that torment of being disconnected from my son. And it was like a torment. And while we were separated, because I did her wrong in college, I got one of those stories, one of those true athlete stories. And I didn't want to hurt her anymore. Honestly, I just like, listen, man, let me get over here, figure this life out. I did you wrong. We're going to take care of our son. So having this redemptive opportunity to see my family together, it means everything. And I think our journey of faith and pursuit of God opened us up to the opportunity or the prospects of a large family. Like we had four, we were 2 to 4. We had twins right after the Super Bowl. And I'm like, obviously that's a joke, when you get all the time. And we have a great relationship. One of my brothers in Christ, Sean Alexander, he might have 13. You might hear Sean. I'm like, listen, I ain't
doing too
got
much.
more money, And we got tired at 6, and I think I just didn't get to the doctor soon enough. And I love my wife, and but it's been a faith journey, and my desire to excel as a father has been the pursuit of Christ, man. Like, wow, I've recognized my weaknesses. I've recognized my need for transformation, and every opportunity to serve my family, I realize how much I need God to be like him, how much I need his heart, not his wisdom, his action, because I really want to see them excel and reach their full potential as humans, as sons and daughters. So it's like super emotional. My whole heart is wrapped into it. Transitioning from the NFL was terrifying, just because the prospect of being away from them, knowing that, man, here I am with 5 and 6 children at the time, and I'm like, how am I going and protect them? These are real things, and God has just raised me up, and trusting him has been what I call trust being the highest form of worship, trusting God to equip me through relationships, through counsel, discipleship, mentorship, and honoring the people in our lives so that we can flourish in the journey.
Oftentimes when we have this question or conversation of faith, with folks who haven't really been able to discover it, they think, that it's about the clouds spreading in the sky and the sunshine coming through and hitting you, and the music coming and life becoming, life. How have you activated faith? Because I think that is what people miss. They don't understand how to activate it day to day so that they can at some point get to the full experience.
Yeah, well, great question. I think for me, because I encountered a person, more or less. I mean, like when I came into faith, it was a life-shifting transition. It wasn't something I learned. I didn't read the Bible and understand it all of a sudden. I encountered a God who I recognized my need for forgiveness and mercy because I just come to the end of myself. Honestly, I'm 24 years old, NFL Special Teams Rookie of the Year, Giants Rookie of the Year, and I had really built a life up to that point that was my own life, and by everyone else's standard, I'm winning, and but I'm in jail. But I'm in jail. So I was just being honest about, man, I clearly don't have life figured out.
Wow.
And I think it's being honest about our condition internally and externally, right? Like, how do you land in these unfortuitous situations? And it's not that suffering is tied to the human experience, but when you know it's your own decisions that's bringing you there, there's folly, right? And I think that's what God is looking for, the humility, so that He can help us, love us, and restore the relationship that He always desired. So obviously, I think for people who have encountered that, the application is in the way that we live. I tell people everybody is literally living what they believe. And regardless of whether they're a professing Christian or not, you're living what you're believing, right? And you sit on a chair because you believe it's safe. If you see that little nylon chair at the cookout and it got and the hairs is coming up from you, like, nah, man, I ain't sitting on that.
Right.
Right. So everybody's living what they believe in a very practical sense. And what I don't want people to, when I live my life and lead my family, I want them to be able to see the reality of all of God's desires and promises embodied through that, through love and demonstration, through training and equipping, and also my children seeing me pursuing the very same things, right? So I'm still on this journey in pursuit of the full life that God would have, because that's what it's about. It's about a life well lived, that can hopefully inspire, right? Like, and I think that's God's hope. When you listen to a song that connects with your heart, you're inspired. When you see an athlete operating at the highest level, you're inspired. You realize that something that you maybe couldn't perceive as possible, you connect with it in your heart in a way where it gives you life, inspiration, breath, and you begin to live. And I really believe that the practical ways that we do that is by being committed to actually what we say that we believe, and also understanding the need for grace and mercy in other people's lives so that they can recognize that in the midst of their failures, there's still the opportunity to recover.
Yeah, one of the other conversations I used to have with Bahati was, yo, why you don't bring me to speak to the rookies? And he used to always say, they ain't ready yet, bro. They ain't ready. I was like, what's up? He's like, why? He's like, listen, you don't even understand. He's like, they not ready yet. And so when you think about that, particularly, you said earlier that you were on the back end, of Gen X, I think it was, and I'm on the back end of boomers moving into that space. When you think about our Gen Zers today, right, and these alpha gens that's coming behind them, they're a different breed. That's who we're raising right now. We're raising the tail end of Gen Zers and the beginning of alpha gens. They are a different breed. One of the topics that you talk about is the act of being, I think it's the act of being coachable.
Correct.
Like, what's the language that you have to kind of figure out, like when we're talking to our kids now, that's very different from the language that we heard to get us in the same spaces?
Yeah, I think what I've really learned is, leading through a language of belief. I've learned this, through my marriage, believing that these young people want to excel, right? And because we're looking at something, and we know, like as believers, we walk by faith and not by sight, but we're looking at something that's contrary to what they are actually espousing, right? Whether it's they say they want to be the best, but they're not willing to put any work in. They say, right? It's like, I would always tell my 19-year-old, he would tell me he likes basketball. I said, but I never see you play.
Right.
Like, park is right around the corner, bro. Like, you want me to sign you up for camps, but you won't go to the park and shoot.
Right.
So it's like we're dealing with this reality. So, but what I had to learn to believe them, and ask the next question to discover, are they willing to do that next thing. And it's because they don't need they don't need gatekeepers to information. So they need context for information.
Right.
And it's a switch, and it requires us to be more humble and exercising less haste than what we're used to. Right. Like that's foreign to us. We went and we did.
Right.
And my parenting journey has been that, is learning patience. And then I look at the first thing that love is, and love is patient.
Right.
So, I think, I've been in tune with this, and I think Bahati was right on, meaning most of them aren't ready. Most of them aren't ready to, we want to bring them to these places of maturity maybe ahead of schedule, because it's not going to connect. It's not going to connect with the audience. We're going to be talking about things that's flying over their head because they still want to play video games.
Right.
They are really and I go back in the same role, and I'm in the same position. I'm trying to bring these guys to a position. Here I go. I'm sorry, brother. Let me oh my goodness gracious. All right, cool. So I'm trying to bring these guys to a position where, hey man, they can pick up the phone, but no, I gotta humble myself and text these guys. Like, if I'm gonna connect with them, I gotta come down to their level. And I think parents have been challenged and frustrated with the time demands in light of still being a parent, right? I still gotta go hunt and fish for you, and then I gotta come down. So it demands more in this current society to excel at some of the things we're looking to see our children develop in and our athletes develop in. But as a coach at the highest level, you got them. These are the kids you got. These are the players you got. Yeah. You got to figure out how to win with them. And that's
one of the things that Chris Bouchard always says that makes me laugh every time he says it is just, young people be soft. Yes. And one of the other conversations that you also have is about this notion of resilience, right? Yes. And that's one of the things that we focus on in our programming, which is really kind of understanding how the definition of resilience has redefined itself over generations. Part of resilience for us was really about this whole urgency of safety for our dads, right? Everything they said to us was do as I say, don't worry about how I do, because this ain't about what I'm doing. This is about what I need you to know in order to get home safe. Right. And I think that even as Black fathers today, we still have those conversations of safety with our children. But I think that where we miss it a little bit is really trying to figure out how do we build a level of resiliency in our children so that they can overcome, because it feels like that they don't have the stamina sometimes to overcome. Or we always say, you ain't grow up in the era that we grew up in. You don't, blah, blah, blah. When I was playing basketball, they couldn't hip check. When I was playing football, we could kill the quarterback. Blah, blah. We start throwing stuff. Somebody told me one time before, whenever you start a sentence with back in the day, you've lost them. You lost them. But what does resilience look like, for our kids today?
Yeah, and I've been aware of this reality while I'm in the midst of raising, especially my oldest sons. What you realize is the need to capacity build. Being a father of 7, we homeschooled for 15 years. So that means my wife, I felt like the superintendent. I was working full time. We had ministry elements in our life. So there were other people we were trying to serve. And I realized this reality of limited capacity, right? And then, but the children still need what they need. Right. So are we going to find the healthiest environment to build resilience, right? And that basically means, how do you fail fast and get back up, right? Like really at the end of the day, when you talk about resiliency, it's the willingness to encounter adversity and get back up and not be paralyzed by it. Well, I think the parent wants to protect their child, of course, and they should, and it's a mission. But we also have to be a willing and to invite the adversity, and we want to provide the healthiest environment for adversity, right? You don't want to fake. I used to mess my, I was disturbed when my children were in these teenage years, my sons. And I'm like, man, I'm about to go drop these boys off in the hood. I didn't know what I was trying to accomplish. I'm like, man, y'all ain't got the grit. I'm like, I'm afraid for me and you. I'm like, am I failing? But I think what I was really trying to say is we need an environment because I'm limited in bandwidth or my ability to train you in this discipline that you're going to need to flourish as a man, to be
Right.
resilient, because the world, we do have to prepare young men, especially for a hard world.
Mhm.
And that's the mark of a man. We love movies like 300, and he's tossing his kid around in the ring, and he's wrestling with him. But now we learn that as a young kid how important it is to wrestle with your young boys. There's
Mhm.
data connected with the touch, the engagement level of fathers and sons, and the ability to stir up resilience. And I think that our society has gotten so out of joint for what's best for us, it makes it very difficult for the family to find the healthiest substitutes in light of the rat race that so many of us find ourselves living in. So it's so necessary to do this for all of our children, even more so our sons, because these are the ones that are going to be the gatekeepers
Mhm.
to preserve families, to preserve communities. It's men that are going to be the gatekeepers, strong men, strong, healthy men. So we want to raise up strong, healthy, but heart-centered men that can serve our women so they can become the lionesses that they already have been for us in so many different previous generations.
Yeah, that leads me into my last point before we close out. Often when I'm talking to guys about fatherhood, we tend to lean into conversations around our sons. What challenges you about your daughters?
Oh man, let me tell you what. Honestly, they have been my twin daughters are 16 years old. They're my Super Bowl babies. They were born 2.5 weeks after the helmet catch.
Hmm.
And honestly, I found a very powerful spiritual dynamic. I know we in fellowship a little bit. My two sons were conceived out of wedlock, and there was a spiritual dynamic in leading them and serving them where it was a little more difficult for them to receive my love. And
Hmm.
I'm an old heart, I'm man, I'm a scrappy old hurt. I got a lot of
Hmm.
that, but it's like it's oozing on the inside. I have a broken heart too, and my desire to see them flourish is overwhelming. So I live by three pillars, which is kind of tied to my company: truth, transparency, and transformation. And so I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to be transparent to build the bridge for and be vulnerable about how I feel, what I expect, and that's what's caused me to be a healthy father and to the best of my ability. But my girls, I would say, have been my safety. Touch is my biggest love language, so I get the best hugs and kisses out of my girls. Whereas my oldest two sons, boy, I was, sometimes it felt like a wrestling match,
Hmm.
and some of that is normal because you're dealing with some testosterone as they come into puberty, their own mind. But I think the receptivity and the connection of my daughters being our first children in the safety of a healthy marriage it's really been a gift. It hasn't been as difficult, and we of course I date them as often as I can. They know that they're safe with me. I want
Hmm.
them to understand that Daddy's going to lead them and give them the blessing. When I said, we got permitted guns and we got the word. Which way you want to? What door these young men want to come in through? Because
Right.
I am the door to their. And I just believe that, so they're safe, they're secure. So it's really, the girls have been my joy and my refuge in my parenting journey, and I haven't had that many major stumbling blocks and kind of getting
Hmm.
to their heart. And so, whereas my sons, man, they work. It's a privilege and a joy to have sons because they're your image bearers and they're the ones who actually carry on that legacy, right? That seed.
Hmm. Yeah.
But my girls have been just really the refreshing for me in my journey in our home.
Yeah, and in a very ironic, sometimes eerie way, particularly with my son, because he's my only boy,
Mm,
that there are times when I am parenting him that I feel like vicariously I'm living through him as I feel like I'm parenting myself.
mm.
It's a really weird thing where I'm around him sometimes and I'm doing things and it could be very normal things for him, right? So
Sure.
one of the things with us is, my son has never taken a solo route to school without his parents. primarily me. He's in the 10th grade, and I've driven him to school every day of his upper, academic life throughout
Wow.
school. So we spend a lot of time in the car. We spend a lot of time talking. We spend a lot of time doing all those things. And there are these moments where I look over him and he could have his iPods on, doing whatever he's doing where we're not talking. And my mind says to me, man, I wonder what it feels like to have your dad take you to school and pick you up every day. I wonder what that feels like. And it's a feeling that keeps you going, right? Because in my mind, it's like, I don't know what that feeling is. I've never experienced it, but whatever it is for him, he will never be without it.
It's amazing.
One day he will have to tell me one day he will have to articulate for me what that feeling is.
Yes. What a gift, kid. Because I'm, just to piggyback on that, my son is 2 years into the Air Force. My oldest son, he's 22 years old. At 21 years old, I have him at college. At 21 years old, he's a healthy, stable young man moving into the Air Force. The irony, right? And I had to, I heard someone say this to me that was very impactful in relation to fathers. Our job is to give our children roots and wings. And so when he, ironically moves into the Air Force and we're releasing him in a fashion, right? Not only was it emotional, but now allowing him to come to his own conclusions about who he is, right? Like, hey man, you're there. Right. I believe that you have everything that you need. We're here for you. We're so proud of you. And now he's coming back, right? The conversations that I couldn't get out of him, my boys be like clams sometimes, and I'm like, talk to me, man. And I realized, as a fearful young parent, I was probably beat him into submission, expect him into submission, where they were so respectful, they didn't know when to talk. So, but yeah, now they're able to communicate and tell me these things and what was valuable and what was and it's overwhelming, man. It's overwhelming knowing that they feel supported. They feel like what was given to them was good. Yeah. So, sons and daughters, they're such precious gifts. Nothing can melt the heart quite like a daughter because they're so tender. You do react different. You recognize and honor the differences, but there's nothing that makes you prouder than having a son. And being able to see yourself directly in some form of fashion is very overwhelming when you consider being an image bearer for me of God. Like, wow, you have a son that bore your image, and here I have a son who's bearing mine and continuing after his own unique mission as he continues as an evolving man. So yeah, the gift of family, I really believe, is God's gift to the earth.
Yeah. My cousin who lives in Milwaukee came out to speak at an event that she had one time before. It was a women's group, and they wanted me to come and talk about the essentialness of fatherhood. And later on that evening, when we were out to dinner, she said to me, listen, she goes, I'm going to give you a piece of advice when you are speaking to rooms, that look like this. She goes, when you're speaking and when you get up to the stage, be sure that you invoke your wife's name at least 3 times. And I didn't understand what she meant by that when she said it to me. But later on, we had a conversation. And I was like, cuz, like, now I know what you're saying. Her thing was, everybody's not seeing you from the stage as the expert in what you're talking about. They're seeing you with other things in your mind, and you have to spiritually, you have to cut those cords. So our conversation can't be complete without bringing Mrs. Tyree into the conversation. Talk to me a little bit about how she still strengthens you today and what your marriage means to you in the work that you do and as being a man.
Yeah, she, if I could be honest with you, we met freshman year in college, and there was just something about, she's obviously beautiful. And there was something about her that I was just drawn to deeply. But getting to know her, she has been the most abiding, supportive, and where it talks about building me up, right? And I've been fortunate in these 20 years of a sacred union, 25 years together since 1999. I've been fortunate these 20 years that we have experienced something that we never really could have imagined because we've been in agreement. We've been in agreement about what God is, who God is, and what his desire is for us. So what I can say about my wife is that, man, I am literally the only way that I could have walked out this purpose that I really believe that God has brought me into is by me being able to recognize and see the helpmate and the glory of God in her, but also, and it's like I said, just receiving, but also crowning and equipping her to reach her fullest potential. One thing that the gift of God in this marriage and who she is to me is watching her flourish according to who God has called her to be, giving her voice the ultimate preeminence and bringing her up right alongside of me. One thing I've always been cognizant to do when I'm out with my wife, obviously I'm the public figure, but to immediately bring her right alongside. Let me introduce you to my wife. And because we are one, right? So I understand what most people are looking for if they're going to greet me, and whatever pleasure or not so much as that may be, but to meet me is to meet her, is because she's my helpmeet right alongside of me. So I mean, that can get really deep in relation to how I feel about this woman. It's been 20 years of holy, righteous matrimony, 7 kids, 15 years of homeschooling that she has done 98% of the travail. And our children, by God's grace, they're healthy and they're flourishing. And a lot of that has been our agreement, but her ability to be that Proverbs 31 woman in merchandising and do so many things. I'm like, God, the way you created a woman is so beyond my brain. So yeah, Y'all Tyree really gets, when it comes to the Tyree Nation, she's front and center, and I give God the glory for that.
I love it. I love it, bro. I love the Tyree Nation. We got the Braswell brand. That's what we got. We the Braswell brand. Everything is about the brand. Protect the business, protect the brand. That's what I always say to them. Listen, tell people about the work that you're doing, the business, how they can get in touch with you, and what that looks like.
Yeah, man. David Tyree 85. Always been a speaker. I mean, collaborate. I mean, like really at this stage, I've kind of been blessed to kind of come out of the NFL ecosystem officially. I'm so always going to be within it and connected to it. That's family. But just allowing God to bring us into a new chapter, primarily in entrepreneurship. So I have a few consultant clients, DT3 Enterprises. Anywhere that we can align with truth, transparency, and transformation is where we want to be. So how we can help any organization or work through, in any capacity, we're here to do that. And obviously, even in ministry, we just have a lot to offer. So I'm really excited about the next phase of storytelling. Okay, just connecting with your organization, you a little further, sharing the journey of fatherhood, spiritually and even in the marketplace, how to occupy. So we've always done a lot of these things kind of in secret, and we're just going to find the best way to bring them into deeper reaches and audiences, so that my story can connect to the hearts of this emerging generation, whether it's son, husband, or father.
Thank you so much, bro, man. I appreciate you. And as my bishop always says, I love you to death, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And so let's keep this conversation, going. I appreciate you. We're going to continue to stay connected so that we can continue to move our missions, our callings, into the world, so that, families flourish, and the kingdom of God gets all the glory for the work that you and I do. And to all of my other I Am Dad podcast listeners who tuned in today to think that we was going to be talking about the Giants season, we ain't doing that today. All you need to know is this man is responsible for our 4. That's all that matters today. That's all that matters. We're not talking. Why you want to bring up old stuff? We ain't talking about old stuff.
We ain't talking about the 1 and 3 right now. We win it right now. We got to win his father.
That's all we need to do.
We're waiting on these Giants. We wait
patiently. We waiting patiently. You know, and if you're a New York fan, any level of New York fan, you know, it's an exciting time. I posted the other day about it being an exciting time to be a New York fan. You know, you can, you know, lament over your specific team, you know, but when you're looking at the Liberty, you're looking at the Yankees, you're looking at the Mets who just advanced, you're looking at the Jets that's giving us a little bit of hope, you know, out there, you know, the Knicks, we can't.
My Knicks, that's the team I'm really a fan of. I'm Kenny Walker days, Trent Tucker days. You know what I mean? So it's been a drought and a half.
Yeah. So Giants, Nets, they in prayer right now. That's where they, you know, somebody got to be in prayer. Everybody can't be focused. Somebody got to be in prayer. So they in prayer at some point. Listen, thank you everyone for listening to I Am Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell, and you know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And as my good friend and mentor always said to me, Kenny, you know what? It's nice to be important, but you know what? It's more important to be nice. To all my I Am Dad listeners, until next Sunday, peace out.
Great news.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad Podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am dad, period.